Now, as part of a series of actions intended to shield U.S. businesses against low-cost imports, U.S. President Joe Biden has declared a 100% tax on electric cars built in China. The White House says that it is enforcing stricter restrictions on $18 billion worth of China's imports, a move that is expected to exacerbate trade tensions between the two largest economies globally. In addition to a tariff increase on EVs from 25% to 100%, other tariffs will increase on lithium batteries from 7.5% to 25%, key minerals from 0% to 25%, solar cells from 25% to 50%, and semiconductors from 25% to 50%. Now, joining us to discuss electric vehicles and the mining sector in Ghana, Nigeria, is Peter Nwaobi, who is Senior Manager, Energy and Natural Resources Group, KPMG, Nigeria. Peter, it's such a pleasure to have you. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, too.
Great. We have quite a bit to get through, but let's begin with what you make of Biden's administration raising EV tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles. What can we make to 100%? What can we make of that?
Okay, very interesting news. I also came across that news, and it started from Trump's administration, and Trump had started in adding tariffs already to 25%. He received a lot of backlash. His administration received a lot of backlash that he's trying to create some form of trade wars. But I think it's so much about the American principle of putting America first. Nationalism, ensure that you're American, you buy from America. You know, China is currently the world's most largest producer of EV vehicles. America is not doing badly themselves. America prefers that the Americans are driving their own vehicles than importing from. So increasing it to 100%, it depends on the perspective you're looking at it from. If you're looking at it from the American perspective, he's doing well for his people. But if you're looking at it from the Americans themselves, they are not very happy with this because the Chinese options are actually significantly cheaper than the American options. So it's so much about putting America first, ensuring that, because for the strategic reasons of ensuring that if America's EV vehicles continue, the EV factories continue, because China, if you give China the way, they will definitely put the American investors away from business, send them away from business, and it will affect the GDP for the nation. It will definitely affect employment opportunities for their people who are currently working in those processing plants. So it's so much about putting America first. That's what we see America doing now. But if you look at it from a global standpoint, creating trade wars may not be the best way, but it is definitely inevitable given the recent news headline of moving it to 100%.
So you're saying, while looking at it from a strategic perspective, it becomes quite subjective
in
terms of how you see it. But surely this move is likely to inflame trade tensions, as you mentioned here, between the world's two biggest economies. How can this be managed relationship-wise?
America and China are not very close allies, even though on a global scale, if you look at it, you will say, okay, they are just world champions, world big countries on their own. But when it comes to trade, they pay specific attention to what is good for them. Yeah, so I wouldn't blame Biden. I'm sure if you put this in a debate and you throw it open in a room full of people, there will be a lot of arguments for, there will be a lot of arguments against. But they will definitely do what favors Americans. And I don't think it's a bad thing. It's what we want our own administrators, our own politicians to do, putting Nigerians first. So I can't question what Biden has done. As you said, and as I also mentioned earlier, it may lead to trade wars because definitely China would want to retaliate. America is also exporting things globally. So we can only watch how the events unfold.
Right, and national interest comes first,
Absolutely.
right? It sounds like that. Well, now you wrote an article on lithium's potential for Nigeria's economy and, of course, placed China as one of the top 4 producers alongside Australia, Argentina, and Chile. Now, is lithium behind China's ability to produce so many electric vehicles, and is this what's alarming the West?
Obviously, one of the major considerations in setting up factories is closeness to raw material. So China is one of the big 4 producers of lithium, like you rightly mentioned, and that they've already keyed into it, and they're already mining it largely in large scale. That has helped them significantly in terms of production of EVs. But away from lithium, The economy in China, too, has placed the EV sector, electric vehicle sector, as priority, and has also been providing them with subsidies, significant subsidies. From what we understand, there are over 200 brands of EV producers in China currently. And if you juxtapose this fact, the fact that there is subsidy, the fact that there is the raw material, the fact that there is labor, cheap labor, if I may say, because of their population, they are able to actually capitalize on all of this to maximize their output in terms of EV. But of course, the presence of the fact that lithium is readily available in commercial quantities actually helps them maintain that position as world highest producer of EVs today.
Yeah, I mean, the backward integration certainly helps them. It's to their advantage. It makes sense. But now coming to Africa, Ghana is developing its first lithium mine. That's exciting news, isn't it? But now the Australian company that is doing the technical work is listed its shares also on the Ghanaian Stock Exchange. What does this message signal?
It's, investment opportunities or investment decisions are typically governed by how easy it is to do business in a particular country, ease of doing business. Ghana is simply telling the world that they are ready for business. They've been ready. They are not new to mining. Sometimes a lot of people will when you hear news like this, you would say, why is Nigeria not toeing this lane? Why are we not having similar investment coming towards Nigeria? But it's so much about, in 2020, for instance, I think that was the last available report for ease of doing business. Nigeria ranked 131. Ghana was doing about 118 at the time. And for the past 2-3 years, they've actually been doing better when it comes to ease of doing business. It's just cumulatively, if the investments must flow to an economy, the country must also be willing to create an enabling environment. And it just shows that Ghana is ready. And they are there. But it doesn't also take away from the fact that the economy in Nigeria is not also making strides, especially in terms of lithium. A few weeks ago, a lithium processing plant was commissioned in Nasarawa State. I don't know if you saw it, the federal government with its panel and all, they went there to commission a lithium processing plant. And we are making several other opportunities are coming up that we are monitoring currently. So it's Ghana's turn today. It could be Nigeria's turn very soon, and we're already there. I
like that you say that, and I want us to spend a bit more time on the Nigeria part. But I want to touch on what you said just a few seconds ago. You did mention that Ghana has, in fact, been ready for a while.
Yes.
So what has impeded the process of investment all this time?
In Nigeria or in Ghana?
For Ghana.
Okay, lithium, it's, in quotes, an emerging market. Yeah. Even though for Nigeria it's still very new, but globally it's something that has actually been there. There is this, towards the drive for sustainability, environmentally friendly options, greener options. We have SDG goals stating 2060, very interesting, novel goals, noble goals. Whether they are achievable is something different. Yeah. So it's so much about the global movement currently. So even if attention was not placed so much on lithium before now, today the story is very different. And Ghana has identified and located significant deposits of lithium since 2018. Nigeria is just coming on stream in 2022 when we started discovering lithium deposits scattered around the country. Till date, we don't still have tangible or reliable quantified evidence of what deposits we have of this lithium, but we know we have because they've seen it. So the difference is so much about them they've put their house in order. Their regulatory commission there in Ghana for mining is also doing a lot currently to ensure that this information, the data information, geoscientific data is readily available. And of course, they welcome them with open hands. Tesla came to Nigeria in 2023 and wanted to also buy our lithium. I don't know if you remember this case, a classical case. And in the process of negotiations with the government was when he was informed that he needs to set up a processing plant. But Tesla is just looking for where to get the raw materials and take them to his country. So it's so much about making fiscal policies that are clear, creating an enabling environment, and also sending a positive signal
and
out.
most importantly, having that readiness, just being prepared
Absolutely.
for opportunity, like they say. Yeah. Well, let's come to Nigeria a little bit more now. 1 year into a new administration and dispensation, how would you assess the attention towards the mining sector in Nigeria?
I've been following mining for a bit, at least for the past 2-3 administrations. I've been close to the events happening in the sector. And I dare to say that, without trying to sound political, there has not been any time in the past when we have greater hope in what the sector portends, what the sector can actually do in the coming years. The administration started by splitting the Ministry of Steels Development, which was before now just one ministry, into 2. Creating the Ministry of Steel Development and the Ministry of Solid Mineral Development to ensure there is more strategic focus, more focus on each of those sectors. Before, everything was under one ministry. And I mean, if you look at the Ministry of Steel, one of their major or key priorities, which was also signed into a bond, is the resuscitation of the Ajaokuta Steel Complex. The minister has only majorly that agenda on his table 24/7. And definitely, it will definitely receive the necessary focus. It is receiving already, because we're already seeing a lot of movement. A lot of actions are already being taken. I don't want to go into detail, but I can tell you for free that if this trajectory is maintained, we may be able to see significant progress in the resuscitation of that steel complex. For the solid mineral development, that's the Ministry of Solid Mineral Development now. There's been a lot of more actions. Of course, it's broader, it's bigger than the Ministry of Steel, which is a little bit more directional. The minister, maybe because of his pedigree in journalism, is doing very well when it comes to putting Nigeria in good light. His political statements, his statements are not just political in nature. We are seeing them being backed by actions. So he came in and so far is trying to sanitize the sector. Sanitization of the sector starts from ensuring that the licenses that has been issued are actually operational, because it's not so much about saying, it's not about saying you have so much licenses, but Nigeria is not benefiting. Revocation of license is now very, I think within the past 1 year, we've seen 2 revocation rounds where more than 2,000 licenses have been revoked. And it's not an automatic revocation. He makes the announcement, issues the names of the licenses, the companies, gives them 30-day window to come and, of course, reconcile. And if they are still interested in those licenses. This alone is trying to enforce the use it or lose it principle. If you are not using it, let's give it to serious people, serious investors who are willing.
So you see good work being done
Absolutely.
in that light.
And if you want to look at it from a figurative perspective, figures, the contribution to GDP, in 2016, Nigeria signed the roadmap for development of the mining sector. And one of the goals in the roadmap was that by 2020, by 10 years, 2026, we should have achieved a 3% contribution to GDP.
By what year is that, please?
2026.
Okay.
However, over the years, at least for the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, since this was signed, we've not exceeded 1% year on year.
That's true.
Yes. Interestingly, the fourth quarter, which happens to be the first quarter under this current administration when it comes to mining, under the current ministries now, Nigeria was able to beat the 1% threshold when it comes to contribution to GDP. And it was a significant leap from about 0.85 to 1.33. So it's massive, and it's also a testament of the fact that it is working. We may not be seeing so much about what the results yet, but I am sure that if this trajectory is maintained, it will definitely yield results. Finally, one of the major issues with Nigeria, and which also causes investors to not want to come in, is the fact that there are no reliable data. Only yesterday, the ministry launched the Mineral Resource Decision Support System, which is an online database of all the minerals in the country, their location, and the quantity of the deposit, including infrastructure in those areas, which is a very good one. I believe the ministry the administration is taking mining very seriously, and if all things, if they continue this way, I'm sure we will see good results.
I think that's the key word there, continuation and persistence, because it is fair to say that in relation to other countries such as Ghana and South Africa, it's still a fledgling mining sector when we're talking about Nigeria. So quite a lot of work needs to be done, but we need to see a continuation of those efforts. Peter, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Global Business Report this morning. We've unfortunately run out of time, but we'll be seeing you again and continue this conversation next time.